Welcome back to Stories from the Water. Just me this week. This is a reflection episode, a chance to sit with a theme, and it's also part of Podcast-a-thon, which I'll tell you more about in a little bit. This month, the theme I'm exploring with my community, my swimmers, and in my own swimming is release. While I've heard of children being born in the water and growing up with an intimate knowing of their place there, I suspect most of us learn to swim out of fear. Kick hard, pull hard, get to the edge, which makes sense. Swimming is a life-saving sport. We want our human terrestrial selves to be able to get to the side if we fall in. How did you learn? Was it joyful? Was it urgent? Do you remember? I ask because release is such an interesting word in swimming. Most of us didn't learn from a place of release at all. We learned from a place of survival. And those are very different starting points. If you listened to the last episode with Deep Blue author and open water swimmer Verushka Devita, you may have been as surprised as I was that she immediately felt held by the water. More often, I identify with the deep-seated fears that we explored in the episode Lizzie's Way Back to the Water. Not that I didn't learn to swim early. I did, before I could walk. But I've always carried fear. When I stop and think about it, it's remarkable to me that despite that tension and urgency, myself, like many of you, went on to develop a deep love of swimming, of the water. Through community and relationships, swimming stopped being about escaping. We became swimmers. But becoming a swimmer doesn't mean we've finished letting go. If anything, the more time we spend in the water, the more we discover how much we're still holding. And it's worth remembering that many people don't stick with it. Most people, in fact, never find that moment of release. They learn just enough to survive, hopefully, and then they stay at the edge. I feel like I understand that edge. Not because I stopped swimming, I didn't, but because for decades, the ocean was a place I kept my distance from. I was in my early 20s when I strode confidently into the ocean in Hawaii. It was a late summer day. I was full of spit and vinegar. The ocean taught me respect. The waves pushed me down and tossed me around, and fortunately, spit me out. This seeded a fear in me that I carried for a very long time. The ocean was beautiful scenery, but it wasn't yet swimmable water. And when the ocean is only scenery, it's easier to feel separate from it. But when you swim, when you float, breathe, and move through the water, you experience something different. You feel its support. You feel its power. You feel your place within it. What I find remarkable is that this shift can happen at any point, and it doesn't always look the way you'd expect. I saw this recently with a swimmer who seemed perfectly comfortable in the water. She came from a long line of swimmers, and yet she held so much breath and tension locked in her body. Once she released the air, once she let go of the instinct to kick hard and simply allowed herself to float, and then progressed that float forward, she started to effortlessly slice through the water. I've lived it too. Years, decades actually, after the ocean tossed me around, I went back to an island in the Caribbean and swam its length. 26 hours in the water. That swim is where I finally released my fear and fell deeply in love with the ocean. Not by conquering it, by learning to move with it. And that's the thing about releasing in the water. It doesn't just change how you swim. It changes how you see the water around you. When you stop fighting, something shifts. You start to notice the water differently. The temperature, the light, the way it moves around you. You become, in a small way, part of it. And that changes things because it's hard to care about something you feel separate from, and it's hard not to care about something you feel connected to. Which brings me to Podcastathon, a global podcaster movement to raise awareness of causes that matter. I'll put a link in the show notes. Do you think swimmers understand this connection instinctively? The connection between swimming and the waters we swim in? I'm not sure, but I want to highlight an organization doing important work for the waters so many of us love, Ocean Conservancy. They work on some of the biggest challenges facing our oceans, from reducing plastics to protecting marine ecosystems, to advocating for climate policies that help our oceans stay resilient. I believe the most people likely to care about that work are the people who felt the water, really felt it from the inside. And that starts with how we swim. Swimming teaches us the water isn't something we can dominate. It's something we learn to move with. I can't speak for everyone, but for me, that relationship changed everything about how I see the water I swim in. Which is one of the reasons I care so much about helping people come back to the water. Not just to swim better or to swim without pain, even though that's very important, but to experience what happens in the water and in your life when you release the tension, the fear, the instinct to fight. When that happens, swimming becomes easier. The experience becomes deeper. And the water becomes something we want to care for, not just look at. So here's my invitation for this week. Get in the water. And when you do, see what you notice. Maybe there's somewhere you're holding on in your shoulders, your jaw, your hands. Maybe there isn't, but the noticing itself is worth something. I know it's possible when we release. I've seen it, I've lived it, and I believe there's always something more to discover, no matter how long you've been swimming. Because that's the thing about this relationship. If you allow it, it doesn't end. It just keeps opening. Thanks for listening.